Hello, ladies and gentlemen. uh, it's me, Max McCrary, Mooks Millie, coming back trying to get the podcast going on a regular schedule, and this is going to be the first one that I post with my good friend Briana Bowers.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Um, Briana is local. She is a very talented singer, and I'm very happy to have her on the show.
Oh, you're
When
making me
did you
happy.
start? When did you start like doing music? Like, I guess serious is the right word, but
Yeah, like seriously doing music.
yeah.
Probably. I guess it depends on your definition of serious, but I started playing guitar when I was 14 because I took Mr. P's guitar class in at Shalleck.
Shout out Mr. P.
Yeah, shout out Mr. P, my bro. And so I did that, and then it was funny because I started writing my own songs because I figured you couldn't screw up a song that you wrote yourself, and that was how I started writing songs. And so then, like a couple years later, I just had been working and working. I loved it. I got addicted to just playing guitar and singing. I'd come home every day and play guitar and sing and write songs. And I think the next year after that, I was playing at Bogart's in Millville. So I was already like playing out at that point. And then I just kept going from there. And then when I went to college, I was deliberating over what I wanted to go for. And I decided to go for music. And that was awesome because I expected to hate music theory because I had always hated it in high school and I just didn't get it at all.
Yeah, that's like I feel like there like you can dabble in music, you know what I mean? And then music theory is like it's like the nerd bedrock.
Totally.
Like
Totally.
it's like the difference between like someone that likes music and a music nerd.
Totally. And I will confess, I am a music nerd.
I have a lot of admiration for music nerds.
It was funny because, like I said, I expected to hate it because I always played and I just played with chords and I was like, I'm going to write this song and just play it from my heart. And I don't want it to be contrived. I don't want it to be unauthentic. And I thought that if I knew theory, it was going to become very, like, clinical. And I didn't want that. And it was quite the opposite. I went in, wound up loving theory, and it was sort of just like learning how to use your tools to sculpt.
That's like there's some advice that I got. I think Stephen King might have said it. It's that you have to learn the rules of like writing so that you know what rules to break.
That is so perfect. That's exactly what I'm
Because
trying to
like
say.
like when you're writing music, you'll find yourself accidentally doing something that somebody else does, not knowing that you could have done it in a different way that is more you and sounds better. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It like it so this is a good segue into how we met. So you learned guitar when you were 14.
Right.
We met when you were in 7th grade and I was in 5th grade during
Yes, we
the
were young.
elementary school play Aladdin.
Yes.
I was Razul and you were Jasmine, a much
Yes.
more important role. Um,
No, I liked you as a Razul. You played it well.
I just was like the angry guard in the
I know. That's
in,
pretty. You pulled off the angriness well.
but like you were, yeah, I can act angry or I can be real angry. But how like so you were singing before you were playing guitar then? So
Yeah,
but
I
you
mean,
never toyed with the idea of like being a.
I wanted to learn an instrument. Actually, it's funny because like I don't. If you ask me when I started singing, I have no idea. Like since I like popped out of the womb.
That's how it is for me with writing. Yeah.
Yeah, like you just know what you are, from the beginning. And I always wanted to play an instrument, and I knew like wanted to write my own things because I'd come up with these melodies that would just pop into my head, but there was no way to record them, and it wasn't like I had an iPhone at the time. It was just not the same, or I could just like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll record this, and like
Kids today have a very easy time.
they do. They have so much more of a creative outlet because you can just get some app and like, yeah, I'm gonna put a beat over this and like do a melody. Well, I didn't have anything, so I just would sing them and I'd forget them. And I love to write, and I would write poems and books and stuff. So that was kind of how my creativity would manifest. And then I tried to take guitar lessons when I was like 8, and I was really lazy and I just stopped playing. So I didn't play an instrument, but I did always sing, and I would like sing over like those little YouTube karaoke tracks, and that was like as creative as I could get at that time.
That's a really I mean that like we were like the generation that started like before like even entering into music in like the 90s like you had to have thousands of dollars worth of equipment, even to like
Yeah.
do like little tape deck kind of stuff. And we were the first generation that it was like right on the line when we were kids. Like you still kind of needed a guitar, you still kind of needed a laptop and a camera and blah blah blah
We had
blah.
YouTube though, so we
But
were kind of segueing.
we were like right there. Like it hadn't figured the internet hadn't figured out what it was going to do with this stuff yet, but it was all the tools that to do it were there.
Yeah, it's like shit's happening. I just don't know where it's going.
And that's kind of how I feel like this time with art. Like I will say it's like a saturated artistic community, but I like it.
Yeah, I do too. It's a lot to sift through now, unlike before, but it gives more people an opportunity, and you don't have to have money to get out there. So you can find somebody who's like poor living in one house, and they're like, I'm gonna just come out with something. Like there's this guy, I think from Jamaica, he's called Brushy One String.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of him?
I love that.
And
Yeah, the one
he
string guy.
found a guitar that had one string, so he does not know how to play the guitar. He knows how to play one string, and he comes up with these songs and beats. And now he's a published artist. If you look on Apple, Brushy One String, there's this guy who just gets down and jams with a one string guitar because he just found it in the trash.
And that's like the beauty of the internet. Like
Absolutely.
for every like horrible tweeting Instagram life sucking parasite,
Absolutely.
there is like 2 or 3 artists that have gotten their start without this and would have never been discovered otherwise.
Yeah, I mean it's a double-edged sword. Like you said, there's definitely negative things of the internet that we all know, but there's positive too. It's both.
The internet is definitely like the ultimate enabler. It
Yes.
will make you the person that you are behind closed doors, for
Yeah.
better or worse. If you make art behind closed doors, you will find it. If you are a real sick fuck behind closed doors, the internet enables all of that.
We gonna find you.
Yeah, the like I like the ability of like I do think everybody deserves to make art, and I do want everyone to experience art the same way. And that's not to say that there's not different tiers like of art, but it's also extremely subjective. You know, it's not like a race where one person wins and another person loses.
Yeah, it's not quantifiable in that way. And I think I forget who I was talking to the other day about that, but I was saying how can you really say what is good art? I mean, there are some rules to it, like there's theory, but it's so broad that and so many styles that something that somebody likes, somebody else might hate, and vice versa. And that kind of comes down to what we were talking about earlier about what you said about people not producing their stuff because they didn't think it was good enough. They're like, well, I'll wait. I'm not going to put this stuff out there because it's not good enough.
Yeah, so for people that earlier we were talking about before the podcast started, we were discussing what was the exact wording? How it takes more I keep saying this to everybody. It takes more guts than talent to get out there.
I definitely agree with that.
And it definitely is a more normal thing to like I know a lot of very talented people that don't put out their music or their books or whatever because they either don't think it's going to do well or they don't think it's good enough yet, and you kind of have to like I call it falling out of love. Again, I don't like saying I call it these things because it makes me sound like
I like your wording though.
I call it like falling out of love with your own art because like you have to stop treating your words like they're sacred. You have to start like putting down the paintbrush and letting it dry, and you can come back to it and do it again. But if you spend the rest of your life on one painting, at a certain point, like might not be as good as the guy that painted a bunch of different stuff and moved on. You know what I mean? Maybe it's a certain point you're not changing anything,
Right. You're kind of like just beating a horse to death. It actually, it's funny that you describe it that way because I do watercolor and I have been to this really good teacher named Briana, and there's a thing she says if you go in over 3 times on a layer, then you've overworked the canvas. It's ruined. So like don't go in more than 3 times because you're just let it be what it is. Stop overworking it. Watercolor has a way of just doing its own thing, and if you can't allow it to do that, then it's just not the right art form for you. But I think that's sort of our life. Like just stop picking at it. Let it be. Sometimes it's better than you think it is because you're being over critical of your own self. You know, you can't see it with that objective eye.
Yeah, and like that's the thing, the most important thing about art, I think, and the thing that you learn when you, and you only learn this when you put it out. Like you can read about this, but you don't really experience it until you do it. Is when you put your art out, it takes on like a life of its own.
Yes, that's
like,
true.
It means different things to different people, and sometimes it's things that you didn't mean.
That's a little scary too because it's your baby.
Yeah,
so...
and like and it's why sometimes people take it personally.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes the people that like your stuff the most are sometimes the ones that get the most emotional. And that's like sometimes when I put out songs and people tell me they don't like them, like it's usually the people that listen to the most of my stuff that don't like specific ones.
And that's kind of cool because it's actually an opinion. You know, they actually sat down and listened to it and criticized it in their mind.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that they, you know, you just have to take each thing as it is.
And I experience trolls, and I've experienced trolls, and I do deal with them in my own way now. But, like, if for every troll, there are, like... And I think of the trolls the most, which is a shame because I do get a lot of, like, most of all feedback is positive.
Yeah. There's always going to be trolls, too, and I think you should just kind of take that as, like, well, you know, they're listening, and they took the time to comment, so there's that, you know?
And I said this, I pointed this out to one of my trolls, like, I need it. Like, one of the reasons why that song that Ree doesn't like, Bust Back, that we did so well is because somebody decided to troll me on my Instagram because they didn't like that song.
That's awesome. You know, I forget who said it, but there's, you know, that there's no bad publicity.
It's not.
There's no bad publicity. Somebody trashes you and puts it on their page. Well, they put it on their page, so boom, you got publicity. Like whatever.
It doesn't matter if people think you're an asshole because they're thinking about you.
Exactly. Why are you thinking about me so hard?
and that's the beginning. And like the other song that did well, the song where I wrote about hiding illegal immigrants, that song did really well.
Yeah.
Like all my songs that have done the best are the ones that people have gotten mad about.
At least you elicited a response, you know?
Yeah.
You're doing something.
And at a certain point, it's like, is it baiting? Am I just... and is it baiting versus, like, first off, I should be able to say whatever I want, I guess.
That's art.
You know, as long as I'm willing to accept the repercussions.
Yeah,
definitely. I think that you have the right to say whatever you want, but you have the right to everybody has the right to tell you you're an asshole for saying it.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of the freedom to say...
Yeah.
You're representing yourself. Art is definitely, in my experience, a manifestation of who we are, and not everyone likes who I am or what I represent. So if somebody wants to tell me, like, I think you suck, I think you're an idiot, then... okay, you are totally entitled to that opinion, but it doesn't change who I am or what I represent. No,
it definitely doesn't. And people's negativity it's inherent, you know what I mean? People, it's very easy to not like something.
It is.
And like, I don't know if it's always been a thing for people or if it's more like a modern thing, but it's like not cool to support people. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's like... it's fun.
It's funny to troll people. Like, yo, that's shit.
Yeah, it's
and be like, it took you 2 seconds to write, yo, that's shit. But it took me days and hours to come up with that, you know? And it's also, we can click... we have... here's another aspect of the internet. We have instant accessibility to so many things.
Yeah.
So I can just scroll through a feed, look at, like, 3 seconds of video and write, haha, that looks like shit. And write that. Like... but I didn't really even think about it. I didn't even look at the video. Like, I'm just trolling. If somebody's like that, they're not really even doing anything. So I think we take a very casual take because what we're even taking in is casual to us.
Absolutely. There's like a negative, like, it's hard to be supportive of people for some reason.
Yeah.
And I found myself, I try to naturally avoid, like, when I find something that I like, I try to actively and publicly acknowledge that I like this thing now.
Yes, I try to do that too.
Because, like, it's not cool to have, like, feelings about stuff anymore or whatever.
Yeah.
And I realized that, and I really realized that, like, I really like it when people support me.
I really like it when people express themselves, too. Like, I like when somebody leaves a comment that's more than, like, you know,
there's a
cool.
line. There's stalkers in the world, but
that's true.
most people aren't like that. And like,
Yeah.
There's an innate nature like that you become like the Stan song or whatever, like you just get obsessed with like somebody, but most people can accept artists as being people. But that again puts them on fucking pedestals, and that's how you end up with like R. Kelly. So
We have to find a happy medium in here somewhere.
yeah,
People.
you have to be able to, you have to like, if you like somebody's music, you know, you should publicly like say that you fuck with them. But if they piss on people that are minors, they should probably go to jail.
Yeah,
Because
you know, if, there's
that's
always
not
that.
why R. Kelly's actually even in jail. He's in jail for child support.
For child support, really.
Yeah,
That's
if you
interesting.
watch that whole, like, I watched that whole documentary, bro, and it is crazy.
I love documentaries, so I'd definitely be down to
Watch
that.
Surviving R. Kelly.
Okay.
It
Is
is
that on Netflix?
Yeah, it
Okay,
is a
cool.
very interesting case study on like, first off, like he dated Aaliyah when he married Aaliyah when she was like 14,
Wow.
and he gave her a career, and like the first song they ever wrote is like Age Ain't Nothing But a Number.
Wow, that's
And
crazy.
it's weird, and like it gets, by the end of the documentary, he's like, he writes a 16-minute song, and they play it in the documentary. He's like, "What's the definition of a cult? What's the definition of brainwashing? What's the definition of like all the the accusations, the things that he did to these women?"
That is insane.
And
It's very egotistical.
he's a sociopath. Like he's a very like, he has a mental illness that doesn't have a name because it only occurs in famous people, because you can't, normal people aren't enabled to do things like
There
this.
is narcissistic personality disorder that
But like this is like the narcissistic personality of a king. Like what happens when a person just stops being questioned and they're just pissing on children and the people around them can't question him anymore.
it is really scary what power and fame can do to a person and can do to the law. It can become very convoluted and perverse.
Power is a very corrupting, it's
It
a
is.
very corrosive thing.
Yeah. I mean, you look at any kind of government, any time in history, all the way back to like BC to now. I mean, just look at human nature and power, and it's just bad. It can be very, very evil.
I absolutely agree.
Not that like completely like we should just go anarchy, but I'm just saying like it's sad what it can do to people.
It definitely does like call into question the absurdity of another human being able to decide the fate of another human. Though,
Yeah.
like it is like, at a certain point, like you realize that, and I'm not saying don't believe doctors, because this can be stretched. This next quote can be stretched into obscene
Proportions.
Yeah, but
Right.
there's a reason, like when you find out you're dying of cancer or something, they tell you to get a second opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, because
Yep.
it is an opinion.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And like there's this book, it's called Complete Quackery, I think is the title.
Okay.
And it's like it's a history of like crazy fucked up things that we used to do for people. And that's why like I posted like lobotomies used to be considered an effective treatment for depression.
That's so funny that you're actually just talking about that. I actually just wrote a report for psychology about lobotomies being used for seizures.
Yeah.
And
What
it's
the fuck?
really scary. So
And like the idea of a medicine that works being worse than actually an illness. And there's an interesting point in talking about it on, I touch on it in my Magic Mushroom book, but really in Paul Stamets' book, the not in not Paul Stamets, in wow, never mind, in the book How to Change Your Mind, to say the title of the book.
you figure out who the
Yeah,
author
yeah.
is.
You Google it yourself.
We're sending you on
people.
a wild goose chase.
You can do this yourself.
So in that book.
In the book, he talks about. Now I lost my train of thought. He talks about how people don't die well in this country.
Okay.
And it's because like we don't accept, like in Asia, for example, there's a lot more of an accepting of morality. So like when people reach a high age and they're like, yeah, we can give you like this experimental treatment for your cancer, and they're like 90 and they're like, no, it's like, we're just going to go into the ground. We're not going to like fight it, because
Right.
like, is it really worth going into the ground kicking and screaming, like if you don't have to like burn your skin off with chemotherapy. And
Yeah.
and that's not to say don't fight and don't have faith. It's to say, like, accept mortality as being a real thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. And, I don't know. And then it also makes you think about how corrupt the medical system even can be, that it can be people do it for money. And it's just sad. But mortality
Yeah.
is a reality. And, I mean, that's a hard thing to face.
It
But,
it is a very difficult it's a very difficult milestone. Again, everybody will face it in their own way, in their own time. You know what I
absolutely.
mean?
Yeah.
So speaking of big events, what would you say is the biggest thing in your life that made you, I guess, so you're a psychology major,
Right.
you actively make music now,
Right.
you have a boyfriend,
Actually, fiance. We just got
fiance.
engaged a couple
Congratulations,
weeks
officially.
ago. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're pretty
You have a
excited.
fiance now, so
Yes.
you seem to have done pretty well for yourself.
Relatively, yeah.
I would consider it
Struggle's
so.
always real, but yeah, I've had a lot of really wonderful things happen to me this year. I'm super thankful for a lot of things I actually didn't anticipate. So
Such
I'm
as,
blessed. Just even going back to school was a big one.
so what was the decisions around first leaving school and then going back, because
Okay.
this is a big one for a lot of people, I think.
It is a big one for a lot of people, and I hope that my story can kind of console some people or people can relate to it. I went to college and was really passionate about it. I've always been a good student, just love learning, and I was excited because I was going for music, so it didn't even really feel like work. I was like, okay, great, I can learn more about music. I was eating it up. Went for 2 years, graduated, the top of the humanities department, like I was killing it. And then I had gotten my scholarship for stars, and that was what was supporting me financially for college. So when I finished, I paid for college entirely myself, and
Wow.
um, I
Congratulations on that.
thanks. Then, well, I was out of money at that point, so like I rode the scholarship, but then I was like, all right, well, all my friends were going on because they had loans and stuff, but unfortunately, I was in the demographic where my parents made too much money for me to take out loans, and
You're
they
like that awkward middle
exactly.
class between, like, my parents have too much money to get financial aid but not enough to pay for my college.
Exactly. And my parents were like, listen, we can't. I am one of five. So my parents were like, listen, we can't help you with college. And I don't blame them for that. That's cool. They don't owe me college. I completely, and I'm thankful they made me pay for it on my own. It grew me into a better person, grew my character. But anyway, it led me to coming to the conclusion that I was like, I'm screwed. Like, I don't have any more money and I can't take out loans even if I wanted to. So I watched all my friends just continue on. They're like, why aren't you going to college? And I was like, I don't have money, bro. And it was just like,
And so,
it
how
sucks.
long was your gap?
3 years, and they were 3 very long years. So I finished, and I was kind of like, all right, well, what am I going to do with my life? And I had an associate's degree in music, not very employable, and I was really, really sad. I went through a lot of stuff at that time, and I was really depressed, and it was just really hard. Not just from that, it was just a lot of different things, and it was just a really hard time in my life. So I went to work. I worked like 4 different jobs that summer. I moved out of my parents' house. I moved out of my.
Milestones.
It was a big milestone. I was not on good terms with my mom at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
it was funny because we're the best of friends, so that was really hard. And I moved out and I moved into a place in Pittman, and I think I had like $50 to my name after I put down the security deposit and my first month's rent. And I started substitute teaching, and I worked at Walmart, and I just did a bunch of different stuff, and it was just kind of surviving. I ate pork and beans, and it
Mm.
was just that life. So anyway, all that to say, leading back to college. So eventually, I wound up working as a secretary, and they didn't reinstitute my contract, and I was able to collect unemployment from it. And I had just turned 24, which is the age when you're considered an independent on the FAFSA. So they looked at my
Hooray.
income and they're like, "Oh snap, you're really poor." And I was like, "Yes, yes I am." And now I could get financial
Financial
aid
aid,
for
so you
college, and I was so glad.
interesting.
And then by that time I kind of grown as a person, and I decided, as much as I love music now, still nothing has changed there. I wanted to go for psychology, and I wound up going, and all my credits transferred and worked right into it, so it was perfect.
That's
It
fantastic.
was. That was a real blessing with that, because I wasn't sure if I was going to have to redo some stuff, and I didn't even have to. So that was what led me up to school.
So, going back to school now, how so it seems like you took that 3 years to really build. Like you
Yeah,
like I would call it like you didn't not learn. And I think that's the most important thing is that if you're not like in school, if you're not doing something, you still should actively be learning. Even if you've
absolutely.
graduated from school, if you're not actively pursuing goals of higher intelligence. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
In the subtle art of not giving a fuck. Like the last chapter he talks about like when he like jumps off a like cliff diving and he thinks like, you know, this is all that I'm ever going to learn for the rest of my life. Like there's going to be a moment like where your brain is just not going to be able to learn any. Like it's just going to that's it. That's
That
all you're
scares
ever going to
me.
know.
That scares me because I
Yeah.
also I the job I currently do is I'm a caretaker to a woman with dementia, and
That's dementia's my worst fear, I think.
it's like my biggest fear is to lose my mind. My fiance is a quadriplegic, and that presents its own challenges because to have both of those juxtaposed to my life, my my boyfriend has a lot of struggles, but his mind is so sharp and so brilliant. And I kind of think to myself, like, God, whatever happens to me, please don't let me lose my mind. And I'm so thankful that we're able to communicate. It makes it really hard for me to think of, like, what would it be like to be with somebody who had deficiencies in their mind.
Yeah, I mean that like but it seems like that's like when relationships kind of like it's almost like they're not there when they're not mentally there. You know what I
You kind
mean?
of have to change that love. It's
The
the love is still there, but you have to learn to love in a different way.
yeah,
It's challenging.
it's all like there's a certain point like again it goes back to like dying well.
Yeah,
Like if
yeah,
like at what point of your brain activity are you not you anymore?
yeah.
You know what I mean?
But
And
at what point are you you and you just can't communicate? Like,
and
people can't understand.
and that's what I'm saying.
We know so little
My
about the brain.
grandfather was kind of like that. Like when he had his stroke, you could kind of tell that like he was pissed that his body was not doing the things that he wanted to.
Right, he was aware. He's like, I'm still here. I'm just like broken and
I'm
I'm
just
pissed
not
about
here.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
It sucks.
And I can't really clearly remember the things that I did in my life. Like that would be that's horrible to me.
That would.
And like Robin Williams supposedly was starting to get Alzheimer's before he
Really?
committed
That's interesting.
suicide. Yeah, they said I'm pretty sure they said that like a year after he died that he was showing early signs of Alzheimer's. And like when I heard that I was like I kind of get first off, you know, it makes you kind of makes you rethink the suicide a little bit
Hmm.
because especially to have such an powerful career and to have affected so many people and to not be able to remember it and your kids' faces and like
Ugh, it'd be awful. That would be
yeah,
awful. And it goes to show, too, that, like, no matter what we do, no matter how much power or money we accrue, that mortality is here and none of us can escape it. And so it kind of makes you evaluate, what do I want to do with my life? Which brings us back to the learning thing, that I hope that I never stagnate until I die, because there's so much I'm passionate about, so much I want to learn in this life, and school is not necessary to learn that. And I think that is what I learned in that 3 year gap, is that we can learn
anywhere.
everywhere and anywhere, and especially with technology more than ever. But even just walk out into the world, walk out into the woods, go learn the trees, go learn the flowers. There's always something to
Go to
learn.
a different country.
Go to a different country, meet people, talk to somebody you wouldn't normally talk to, go learn about a culture. Like, there's so much.
Yeah, one of well, I'm about this will lead into a question that I'm going to do. One of the biggest events in my life personally was going to Germany when I was 16 and going back after obviously, but just being young and being exposed to people that like didn't know anything. And like I was reading an author about talking about his first time going to Japan and like it opens up with like the strangest thing in the world is when you land in a country where like no one like because he's a storyteller so he thinks of everything in like stories.
Okay.
He's like I'm in a country where most people don't know the story of the virgin birth.
Wow, that's super interesting.
And like it's because a lot of them don't have Christianity traditions in their families. A lot of
Right.
Japanese people are just now either becoming Christian or have no like ties to it at
And that's
all.
honestly not surprising at all. Like, that is not very pervasive in that
And
country,
it's
or at least wasn't.
and it's interesting because they have belief system a system of beliefs that's just not even contrast to ours, just separate. You
Right.
know what I mean? It's built on different blocks.
Right.
So
Some aren't, they don't necessarily think their religion's mutually exclusive with ours. They're just like
yeah.
in addition to.
So okay, so this will lead into the next thing then. What would you say has been your biggest inspiration in moving towards your goals? What helps spark the fire in you? You
For
know what I mean?
musically, I guess.
Musically or like just anything really.
Okay.
You had the courage to go back to school. You had the courage to pursue psychology alongside music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like why?
Okay. I think I could have a couple people I could talk about there, depending, like, I can go into some different realms with goals. I definitely have to say my mom was probably one of the biggest people who inspired me in my whole life. My mom is hard to explain. She is an artist, and a painter, but it's not really so much what she does as who she is, which is another thing we talk about all the time. That an artist is not what you do, but who you are, and that
Mm-hmm.
was sort of how I was raised. We were always raised very artistically to be who we were, not to hide things, to express ourselves. I was always very supported in that with my mom. She was my biggest critic and my biggest fan with playing music. I would play my songs for her, and she would tell me what she liked and what she didn't like. We'd write songs together. She's just a person. She's my best friend, and I think that relationship artistically was a way I really flourished because we share our art together, and I lived in a home that really nurtured that kind of an environment,
Mm-hmm.
between painting and writing and all that. Like, I wasn't really told that that was a waste. I was told that that was beautiful. And some people are told about their art that, like, you can
Yeah.
do that on the side, but like, and that's not really a real career, or you can't, like, or not
Yeah.
even career, just not worth your time. Like, go do something that's important. And that was not what I was taught at all. So even when I went to college for music, like, I've heard a lot of people receive criticism, and I myself have
Mm-hmm.
received criticism about it. But my mom, when I told her I wanted to go for music, she's like, well, I think that's a really good thing because you're talented musically, so
You
go
absolutely
hone your
are.
skill. And that meant the world to me, that she supported me. um, so my mom would be a big one.
I think parents, especially for artists and
Yeah.
probably for everything, you know what I mean? I have a friend who really loves cars, and he was telling me that his son, at 2 years old this last week, got in the driver's seat of his fucking car in the garage and moved the stick shift all through all 6 gears
That's awesome.
just out of watching his dad do it.
Right.
And like that, it's the same thing like when the kid picks up the guitar and starts strumming. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like
Yes.
parents are the biggest enablers of kids' abilities.
Yeah.
And
Or
and
the inhibitors, one or the
yeah,
other. They really have you have a lot of influence as a parent. It's kind of a dangerous job.
yeah, and like you're gonna fuck them up. Like that's the
You
thing
can.
is you're gonna ruin this kid, and no matter what you do, if you're too nice, they're gonna like you just have to try. Like
No parent's ever perfect.
no, and every parent's wrong. So
Of course.
so
And I was the first too, so my mom, she says there's things that she would have changed that I did, and there's things that she still sticks by that I would have changed that she did. But it goes down to, we're all human and we all have different things, and we try our best with our children, and you know,
with everything. I mean,
it's
I think that's the best you can do, and like it's hard being a kid looking at your parents and trying to see it from their perspective because like
yeah.
it's hard to see them as even like just dumbass kids that had kids.
Yeah, it is hard to see that. It's hard to, like,
Yeah.
think about my mom. Like, we've talked after and talked to her. She's like, oh yeah, well, when I was 20 and she did this, and I remember hearing the story when I was like 15 and hearing her telling it, and now, like, being 24 and hearing her telling it, I'm like, oh man, you were 20, like, and you did that, or like, oh, that happened when you were 20. I'm like, I remember being 20. Like, what was I thinking then? And I can see it with a more clear perspective and being like, damn, you were 20. Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah,
You were just a
like
kid and you were stupid and you didn't know and you were naive and sweet and good and like it's just weird. It's
yeah,
weird.
it is. And then like it's chaos. I mean, some people it, you just I don't know. I'm not a parent, but I have had custody of a child, and I realized having it that like, oh my god, that it's fucking impossible. Like
It's trial by fire.
there's no correct way to do this without fucking something up, and that's terrifying to me. The idea that another human is capable not only of leading other people, but of creating more of them to fucking lead other people later.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. And
Yeah.
yet, like, it's amazing that we were like designed to have children, and it's like, yeah,
What? Yeah,
how did we get here?
yeah. Would it have been simpler if we were just cloning each other like amoebas and just
Right.
absorbing nutrients in?
Right, sucking in information from the Matrix.
So did your love of music come from your mom too, or was that more of a?
I don't know. I don't know. That goes down to the whole nature or nurture question, I guess, because my mom said when I was a baby, before I was like one, like I loved Barney, and I would get up and clap and dance when the Barney song would come on, and I would sing it. Like I could sing whole songs by the time I was like 1.5. Like I would just sing little songs, and my mom said I was really good with language, but really horrible with like puzzles, and that's still true today. Like
Um,
I can like memorize the language, but I can't like turn the lock in the door. So somehow it's like
I'm
I
very
balanced out.
similar. You can't work locks either.
Yeah, I suck.
I can't work padlocks, and I think Mr. McMahon, my senior year, actually told me that I'm probably like dyslexic or dyscalculic. And he was like, but nobody ever said anything to you because you can definitely read, because
Right.
it's like all you do.
Yeah.
So, but the way that I like, first off, I don't know my homophones. I don't know my right from my left without looking at my hand.
Me
Like,
too.
yeah,
Forever. And this is such an embarrassing confession because people are like, "How stupid are you?" I'm like, "I swear, I'm not that dumb."
according to my research, because I looked into it after McMahon told me that, and apparently that's like normal behavior of dyslexics.
Wow, that's funny. I don't know if I'm dyslexic, but I do
But
really
you
screw up my
show,
right and
but you
left.
show, it's like a spectrum. You know what I mean? It's like
Right,
autism.
true.
Like you have like a little bit of it, like you're left and right, but you can still make out words.
Yeah.
Some people, their brains just scramble up everything.
Yeah.
I definitely mix up numbers though, like eights and like zeros
That's interesting.
and sevens and like I like if I count money, I have to count money like 5 or 6 times.
Huh, that's funny. I don't have any problems with that at all.
Yeah.
But puzzles and shapes are very bad for me. Like putting together like a bookshelf or something. I'm absolutely hopeless. Like I've had my siblings, like my 12-year-old brother, could put together 1,000-piece puzzle, and like I can't even put together a couple of the pieces. It's pathetic.
Yeah, I can't do jigsaw puzzles either. I'm trying to think of like weird things that I can't do. Like now that we're on the topic of like how I think.
How our brains are messed up.
Yeah, I can't do algebra really. I'm very bad at algebra.
That's interesting.
Like I'm very bad at like I'm good at like I can think of like word problems like again.
Yeah, I think it's just how, and this also is another thing. My piano teacher when I went to college was so awesome. His name's David Anderson.
Mhm.
Super great teacher. He taught my theory too, and I think that's how I fell in love with theory, was just that he was so good at teaching. You know, it's the teacher that makes it, not always the subject. Like,
Yeah, I agree. I
just
I
makes it
don't
good.
like math, and I had a good actually I don't like math. I had a good geometry teacher, and I think that's the only geometry.
Who
like,
was your geometry teacher?
Mr. Brown.
I had him too. He was really good.
He's good. He gave us like a notebook, to be honest with you, and that notebook saved my fucking ass because I could open that note. You could use the notebook on the test, so I
Yeah,
would
yeah, I
just
remember
open
that.
that notebook. And you know, Mr. Brown, if you hear this, I hope you laugh at this part. I gave my notebook to Tommy after I finished the class, and that's the only reason Tommy did it. And he was like reading the next page and going in the next day and like raising his hand like he already knew this shit.
That's
like-
so funny. He probably looked like a top-notch student.
Yeah, he really did. And
I don't know why, but I remember that Mr. Brown's either middle or first name is Seth. No idea why I remember that. And I also remember he taught me the word extrapolating. I was like, damn, that's a cool word, extrapolating. I'm about to extrapolate some data.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know why I like that word.
Extrapolating.
Yes.
It's words with X's are like usually like different, like they stick out in the brain. At least for me, maybe it's because I have an X, and when I see an X in something, my brain, I'm like I like double take at it for like because you don't see them.
Letter.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I just lost what I was talking about. Because my phone went off.
Oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Well, I'll bring it back to out of our brain functioning thing, back to the inspirations.
Yeah. And where your music
getting to
comes from.
And where my music love comes from, right? So, yeah, I think I always had that. My mom would play a lot of good music for me when I was a kid, like oldies and jazz and stuff, and that was really cool. I remember
who sticks out.
Ella Fitzgerald was really big. I remember my mom would play for me. She'd play Alison Krauss a lot. I loved Alison Krauss and like bluegrass music. It was funny because when I went to high school later and I learned how to play guitar, I met Anthony West. We would jam together.
Hopefully Ant will be on this, but
yeah,
Ant is very music theory and...
Ant's super talented.
Yeah, he
I will definitely give him a shout out. He was a huge help to me. It was funny how we became friends. I think Ryan Cartwright told...
Shout out Ryan Cartwright, too.
Shout out to Ryan Cartwright. Told Anthony that I wrote songs, and he's like, oh, word, and like when I heard him play guitar, and I was like, wow, he's really good. So one day, we didn't talk to each other for like a year, but we kind of were like, oh, wow, they play good music well from afar. And then we had a class together. I think it was ensemble class, and then we just wound up sitting down and like saying, hey, you want to play? And we became good friends after that. It was like instantly the music was bonding, and we were just best friends after that. But he taught me a ton about music, taught me stuff about playing, but even more so just exposed me to a lot of great music. And that
Nate's a great, I said Nate, shout out Nate. Anthony West is a great person to expose you to music, because
absolutely
Ant listens to things like, I love people that can go to a record store and pick out like a random record, and then they go home and they listen to it, and they like, that's
so him.
And that's Anthony to a T. And he'll come to you with this obscure band that no one's ever heard of, and he'll be like, bro, you gotta listen to the way that this guy plays this guitar.
And then it's freaking like, great.
And
you're like,
it's
oh
fantastic.
Wow, like I can take from that, and like that's just super enjoyable. Like, we could listen to anything from like Roy Buchanan to Rory Gallagher to like
and
Blondie,
like even like
the Pixies or something.
And like he'll put on like and he'll
whatever.
find like weirder stuff. Like he was showing me weirder songs by the Beach Boys the one day.
Right, more obscure stuff.
Like he's a great guy for just general music interest. Like again, I would like to sit here and just pick Ant's brain about like
he'd be a great person to have on the podcast
about just modern music theory, because like I don't want to say it's a different art, but like not a lot of people gravitate toward the kind of music that Ant does, and it's amazing the kind of stuff that Ant is capable of doing.
Yeah, and his family is very musical, like up through generations, and I think this
the
kind
West.
of goes, yeah, definitely kind of makes you wonder, is it nature nurture kind of thing. So he was a big influence to me, and then I remember the first
Cecil
time
West. The great Cecil West.
Yes.
Shout out Cecil West.
Yes. Awesome guy. But so when Anthony exposed me to that, I remember just kind of getting into the world. Like all I had heard is, I remember when I was in 6th grade, like 7th grade, right around when we met Max, my favorite singers were like Beyonce and Carrie Underwood. So I
would not have guessed that, to be honest
absolutely.
with you.
Little like funny fact, the first song I ever sang in public that wasn't at church was Irreplaceable by Beyonce. So
that's some vocals though. I mean, it takes pipes to do Irreplaceable by Beyonce.
I'm not a very I mean, I guess I must have done okay, but
Irreplaceable like that, like you can't like that.
I would just sort of, so Brandon Badger was like one of my best friends. I realize I'm like doing story inception, but you guys are gonna have
a lot
to
of people
me.
do story
you kind of get lost
and again,
memories.
like we're not like God forbid we're talking about something bad. Like, I don't think anyone, like, these people aren't going to be mad that we're talking
Guys,
about them.
I only
so.
have good things to say. Anything
Yeah,
else
exactly.
bad,
We're
like,
not.
I'll keep you out
We
the
love
podcast.
you guys.
We'll talk about you when you turn the microphone off.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, Brandon was amazing and is a good friend of mine still. I love that guy. And he was a good friend to me, and he, being his, I don't know if you know him.
Brandon?
Brandon Badger.
Oh, yeah, no, I know Brandon. He's a great guy.
Yeah, okay, so then you know his very vibrant personality. He's
and
a
he
sweetheart.
used to hang out with Anita and Elmer and stuff like that.
Then yes,
yeah.
yes, you know him.
Yeah.
So anyway, he kind of found me and adopted me as a pet, and being an extrovert, and I was just very quiet, very shy. I like could go a whole day without talking, kind of a thing. And I guess he heard me singing one day, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, you can sing!" And he would just take me around and
show you off,
show me, like say, "Go
like...
sing this," like, and whatever they wanted me to sing, I would be just like, "Okay, I'll sing that." And it was like whatever was on the radio at the time, so it was like Beyonce and Carrie Underwood and like.
But that's
Kobe
like
Calais.
Really supportive.
He
like...
was, and so he used to say to me, he's like, "I'll be your manager," and I have to give him props too. Like if it weren't for him, I probably wouldn't have like gotten myself out there and sang. I probably wouldn't have even done the play that we did, Aladdin, because like it was a lot of friends pushing me to do it, and I was like, I don't think I want to go out and like put myself out there.
And that's another important like thing that's not talked about, I think, enough. And we kind of talked about this earlier, I think, before the podcast started. Is like it's easier to remember all the negative comments that I've gotten over the time, but for the most part, 90% of everything that I get on almost everything that I post is positive commentary and
that's really encouraging to see the people who like take the time to support you and actually go out of their way to do that.
The supportive people are like the unsung heroes of of people's like we talk like sometimes people don't talk about the scientists that cure diseases and blah 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 blah, all that kind of stuff. Like some of the unsung heroes of artists are some of like the friends that are supporting them in the background.
That's so true, because if you friends who push artists to do that and say like, "Yo, keep doing it, like I know you don't really like this, but like put it out there," like that's good. Any feedback, you might push them to take the next step to say, okay, fine, I'm gonna do that, and then maybe it makes a big step in their artist journey. It really does. Sometimes that boost of confidence just makes all the difference.
Yeah, like they're like discouraging, like that's what I never understood. It's like discouraging somebody to do something is only ever gonna breed negativity. If you tell somebody that they're never going to be a race car driver, or they're never going to be a singer, or they're never going to be anything for that matter, like all you're really doing is encouraging is making yourself an asshole, someone that I would hopefully gets proven wrong.
Right.
Like what's encouraging an artist going to do? The worst case scenario is he just stops making art a different way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Worst that they're going to do if they do art and it's not that good is they're just going to try, they're going to enjoy it themselves, and it's never going to go anywhere. But you know what brings them joy, so why do you care? Especially
with children. Like, that's something that I will never understand, is the discouraging of certain activities in children.
Yeah. Like what? Like what are some?
It can go as far as like, sometimes, and it's I hate to use the sports metaphor because there are a lot of kids that do really like sports.
Yeah,
but
not that sports are bad.
Yeah, if a kid wants to play soccer, let him play soccer.
Yeah,
but if a kid wants to paint and you're putting him in soccer, it's not gonna work. And that was kind of what was happening with me. And I'm good at soccer. I do kind of like soccer, but I also daydreamed the entire fucking game.
That's hilarious because I played soccer for a hot minute and all I did was pick flowers out of the field.
And
my mom was like, "All right, screw this."
And then exactly. And then and like it's one thing to try a kid in something. That's completely different.
Right.
But when you notice your kid's in soccer and he's picking flowers out of the field,
might not be the best soccer player.
Probably not the place that he should be. You know what I mean?
And equally, like if you're trying to make your kid be a painter or play guitar and he's like trying to be out there running all the time and playing with the ball, okay, well maybe he's more athletic. Like give your kid a chance to be who they are, even if it doesn't match your expectations. The best you can get when you force a kid into something like that is a Michael Jackson scenario, where he is a very successful, very, very obscure possible monster. Like that's the culmination of things. Like how could you drive? Like it takes a lot to be able to make someone do some stuff like that. Like I just think not being able to express yourself manifests in a lot of unhealthy behaviors, and it just makes you I don't know, it just makes people really sad. It makes people really sad to hide who they are.
Absolutely. I think there's really nothing. And like that's the thing. Like it's very obscure hiding who you are because like when you tell everybody to do what they want to do, all of a sudden you get some really weird fucking and some like again that's what
Yeah, I guess there are limitations on
like
that.
I love people never cease to amaze me is my favorite to comment is my comment about the human race because sometimes I wake up and I read the news and it's like two doctors have made $10,000 a year dedicating their time and energy to curing some vaccine in some country that I haven't heard of.
Right.
God bless those people. And then at the other time, it's this asshole has stolen thousands and hundreds of millions of dollars from a third world country, and
Right.
he's able to do this and that and the other thing. And that's what I'm saying is like humans are extreme animals.
We are.
And
I think we're all
even Americans are a particular extreme breed of animal. Like, that's what my German friends say about Americans is that like, when we have a crazy kid, that kid is really crazy. When we have a sad kid, that kid is really sad.
radicals.
Like, yeah, like it's extreme. Like it's like TV, and they don't
Yeah.
like in Germany. They don't have like that. Like
That's
the weirdest
interesting.
kid in Germany, and I'm sorry if I don't think that kid will be listening to this podcast, but he was pretty strange. He actually told everybody that he jerked off on the roof of the school one time.
Wow.
Yeah, which is really extra, and everybody like I remember hearing that, and they were everybody in the school, the whole school, which is like not that many kids, but the whole school was like, "Why would you do that?"
Yeah.
And like that's weird, and like. But after they graduated, they still invited him to the prom to drink after prom. But
So he wasn't really that isolated.
no, he wasn't isolated at all.
And frankly, compared to like some things I've heard in America, like I've worked in several schools.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of things. That's really not the craziest I've seen. I can definitely top that story.
Oh yeah,
So,
and he
and
walked.
that's just local.
And we were walking to the bar, and he just decided he was gonna punch this street light out, and he actually broke his hand on this street light.
Oh jeez.
And literally, like in America, that kid could have ended up in a very weird situation that probably is inappropriate and abusive and whatever. But literally, everybody just looked at him and was like, "Why did you do that? And
Right.
why didn't you just go to the bar with us? Like you didn't have to do that."
Right.
And he just goes on being weird, and like it completely changed my perspective. And it's like I don't like to blame specific, like, first off, severe mental disorders that result in things like the deaths of students and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the environment definitely has a lot to do with it. There's a bullying environment in schools. Like it's like it hasn't really changed because it's still so disciplinary. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that the environment in schools definitely could be improved immensely. I saw an article on Facebook, it's like going around that about meditating instead of detention. And I think that'd be really beneficial. I think that a lot of like even you just talk to anybody in who's been in school and it's like, yeah, and I got suspended for that, or yeah, I got put in detention. And a lot of the times we're looking, if you really want to change a person, go to their heart. And I think things that really change students is like, well, I had a talk with this teacher,
Or like an hour of therapy. Like, to be honest,
like
if they
talking
sat
to a counselor, like something like that. Like some people have like, I worked like working at a school. Like I like these kids would go home and like, yeah, well, you know, my mom's abusive and like I don't have any food. It's like, yeah, okay, well, detention's really gonna help that. It's like maybe actually they're just acting out because they're really
Yeah.
depressed and uncared
I mean,
for. It's
I
like
mean, I
on
spend
a
a lot of
case-to-case
time.
basis.
Sorry,
It's different. No, go ahead, go ahead.
I spend a lot of time on Reddit, and there was this one thing that I read about like a kid that was just getting detention so that he would have a reason to not go home. You know what I mean?
I've totally heard of that.
And they're like these are people, you know what I mean? They're little tiny people with thoughts and feelings and developing thoughts and feelings, which is even fucking scarier.
I mean, think about the time when you were 12, when you were 15, when you were 17. Like, I remember those times very clearly, and I still know that who I am now was in that person, and it doesn't seem that far away. Like, I had some very clear, conscious thoughts around those times about who I was and what my world was and what I was feeling.
Yeah.
I had, like, serious sadness, serious happiness at the age of 13, you know, and I understood.
I yeah, I think experiencing serious sadness, it really does make or break people. And that's the scariest thing in the world, because no one, you usually don't get to know when you're going to experience this epic sadness in your fucking life.
No, it usually comes out of like nowhere, and you're like, okay, that just changed my whole world.
Yeah, I'm not a big believer in like rock bottoms per se, but I am a believer in low points
Yeah,
and coming back to low points.
yeah.
But
I've definitely had some low points
yeah,
myself, for sure.
exactly. And you know, you don't know it's hard to, you don't know what anybody else is going through.
No, you don't, and it's funny because when I think about my low points, like really low, um, people would not have known, and people did not know. Actually, I wound up telling people about some of my low points. Like, I went through a period where I was very, very, very depressed,
Mhm.
and wound up going on antidepressants. But before I wound up doing that, I had a period where I didn't, and I just was kind of waiting it out and was just not in a healthy place at all. And to the outside world, I looked totally fine. I just kept functioning, and because I hid that, I didn't want to show that. And I just think that a lot of people do that more than we realize.
Why do you think that you didn't want to show it?
I think I didn't want to show it because I didn't want anybody to ask me why. I didn't want anybody to inquire deeper because I didn't want to share and open up. I think that I didn't want anybody to truly know me because I was afraid that if they did know me that they wouldn't understand.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I evaluated like, is it about pride? Like, is it about the fact that I don't want somebody to know? Not at all. I didn't care if people knew. I cared that I felt convinced that if I shared with somebody, they wouldn't understand anyway. So screw it. I just want to be alone and I want to isolate myself and I don't want anybody to see me.
Interesting.
Sometimes I would just hide in my closet in the dark. And that's how it was sort of symbolic of how I felt about my soul.
Yeah, just locked in a small room in the dark.
Yep.
It it's interesting. So there's two kinds of ways people, I think, deal with depression. There are like the kids that act out, and then there's the ones that close it off.
I'm definitely a close it offer.
And they both have their own risks, I think.
Yeah, they both have pros and cons, totally. Because at least the ones who act out kind of get attention, and it makes you look more. So it's like, why are they acting that way? Some people will inquire more and be like, what's up with you? But then it has the issue of you acting out and has consequences.
Well, yeah, it's a dangerous. I mean, it really goes back to like this pain, this human pain that we all have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It and it does run deep, and it is like something that we share, and a lot of times instead of making it closer, we use this pain to not see it from other people's perspective.
Yeah, like I said, I think I used that pain I felt compelled to isolate myself, not to look for more people who felt the way I did or to connect with somebody who also suffered loss or suffered loneliness. I was just like, leave me alone. I don't want anyone to see me. I want to hide. It drives you to hide.
Yeah, if there, but out of all of my sadness and like losing my parents and getting custody of my brother and whatever else, I'm honestly surprised that the more I try to be honest with my more difficult feelings, the more, again, people amaze me.
Yeah.
Like, people amaze me with how much they helped. Like when Shane died and when my mom died and so many people donated to the GoFundMe's, and that in itself is it just means the world.
That's actually something I admire about you is you're pretty open and authentic about your pain and about you just keep it real. And that's I think something really appealing about your art and about your music and about who you are as a person is that you are just like, yo, this is me. This is my life, the good, the bad, the ugly. And if you relate to it, you relate to it. If you don't, you don't. But like this
Yeah.
is me. And I think that's the most relatable art is the people who are completely honest because frankly a lot of us do relate to it.
Yeah.
Not everyone you'd expect.
That's what I think. I think the more you peel back the layers, and that's kind of like the goal of the podcast, is whoever comes on this thing, it is like the more we peel back the layers, like there are things that kind of make us all closer than we really think that we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We all like we're like organs in a body that are acting like we're not organs in the same body.
That's
and when
a great
we're
analogy.
fighting each other, it's only going to internalize this negativity, really.
And the body, like you said, if we're all organs and we're fighting not to work together, one day the whole human body's just gonna implode. You know, it's no longer functional.
And we know this, and we know it's all going to end one day. And
Right.
and if anything, the fact that it's all going to end makes it, to me, like, fuck it.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
I was actually talking to a friend of mine, Ryan, actually. Sorry to use your name, buddy, about depression. And I used the analogy. I was reading about a bomb technician,
Okay.
and they were like, how do you deal with the stressful situation of like snipping a bomb?
Yeah.
And how, like, that's got to be the most stressful thing in the world. And he's like, it's not. And he's like, because I know for a fact that either I cut the right wire and I'm a hero, or I cut the wrong wire and it's not my problem anymore.
That's a great way of putting it.
And you know, if you go into life with that attitude, it enables you to do a lot of things. Not like there's a book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Yeah.
And if anything, that's the thing I was blessed with in my life, is it's important to not give a fuck.
Yeah.
And
it's very liberating. I can tell you that.
Yeah. And nobody completely doesn't give a fuck. Like,
no, it's a journey. It's a spectrum.
It's
like
very
you said.
clear that I give a fuck about things. But the thing is, don't give a fuck about anything that doesn't like set my soul on fire.
Yeah, you have to be intentional.
You have to not giving a fuck. Giving a fuck about important things means you can't give a fuck about other shit.
Exactly. You gotta be selective.
Be able to say no to things that aren't good for you.
Right. It makes me think, funny, you were just talking about the guy with the bomb. Makes me think of Stonewall Jackson back in history. He was a general, and he would go in like very without abandon, or with abandon. I don't know, one of those. And people would say like, wow, he's so brave, and he'd say, I just believe and I know that God has a day assigned to me that I will die, and until that day, I'm just going to live my life. Like, I'm not going to worry about, is this the day? I'm just going to do it. And then when the day will come, it will come. And God knows it already, and then that's that. And it's ironic because he was actually killed by friendly fire by his own men. And that's how he died. It wasn't even in battle. So.
And like, that's the fucking shit, isn't it? Like,
yeah. Like, he could be on the battlefield worrying all day long, and frankly, it was just one day he was shot by friendly fire. Like, how we can't waste our whole lives just worrying. Like, yes, you are going to die. You can deny it. You're going to die one day.
The healthiest person in the entire world. You can dedicate your whole life to keeping your body pure, and you can get in a fucking car accident.
Absolutely. It's funny because just talking about things that have changed my life. So one of the big events in my life, like I said, was I got engaged. And my fiance, his name's Ryan Gooch Nelson, is a musician. He's an amazing person, and I just love him to death, obviously.
Aww.
And but it's a complicated thing with him. He had cancer and is in remission, and he's also a quadriplegic. He got into a car accident when he was 18 years old, and had an injury on the C6, I believe. And
wow.
So his mobility is like from maybe like his breastbone down. Like he can move his arms, not his breastbone, like, from your boobs down. And sorry, Ryan. But yeah, so obviously that's a complicated life. And it's something we struggle with sometimes, and I know Ryan struggles with sometimes, of like, is this something that like you're going to be able to handle for the rest of your life? And and I also worry like that there's a lot of health complications of like things that go wrong with him, and it's a lot on my heart. But the truth is that he could die from that, but I could equally drive home tonight and get in a car accident and die too. We can't live our lives just worrying about that. And I just have always been of the mindset that we fall in love with each other's souls and we connect with each other's souls. And if we let those kinds of things get in our way, then if you just always worry about the what ifs of life. What if this happens? What if this happens? You may as well just lay in bed and say what if all day long until you die, because you just can't. You're not in control.
Yeah.
You have to eventually decide and realize I'm not in control no matter what I do, and that's terrifying, but it's real, and I have to come to grips with that.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. I just think we have this weird tendency of, like, it's an anxiety thing, really. It's like we're prone to not being to being these, like, twitchy apes that poke at things until they change.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when, like, and that makes us not live in the moment. You know, it makes us think of the future and the past, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But, like, that's why like the Dalai Lama describes meditation as being any act that you do in the moment, and it's got nothing to do with the past, the present, or the future. You're doing it you're breathing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just all you're doing is breathing, and that's the only thing that you're focused on. And like, when you get into things like the flow state of mind, and people in sports and performers on stage, like, there's an inert thing there. Like, time kind of freezes, and you're kind of out there in the gray of space-time.
It's really beautiful, actually. I love meditation, and if you can get to that point, it's actually a total discipline, but doing it is so freeing. It's very freeing.
Absolutely. And my peak writing experiences. Like, if I could write in that state of mind, and I could live my life only writing in that state of mind without ever needing to eat or shit or breathe, I would...
That would be like heaven to me.
Yeah, I would spend my experience in that.
Me too, because if I could write and do art and do music all in that state of, like, clarity and purity of mind, and I'd just be like,
it just feels like you're connected to the world. You know what I mean? It just feels...
totally know what you mean.
The words just feel perfect, and it just really...
It's very soul penetrating.
Yeah,
if you haven't experienced this, you probably just think we're a bunch of, like, insane hippies, but, like,
but
it's true.
It's interesting, and, like, I've talked about it with people that have done it and found it in very real experiences, like cooks, for example, experience like that when they're cooking something and it comes out perfect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, like, I wrote an essay about this, and I deleted it or lost it somewhere. It was called "You're Not a Fucking Artist," and it was about, like, if anyone can convince you you're not an artist, then you're not. But, like,
that's cool.
If you're gonna grit your teeth and just do it, if you just forget about everything, you forget about being famous, you forget about sucking, you forget about everything, you might actually just be an artist.
Yeah.
You won't get anything else out of it. You might be broke, you might be this, you might be that.
But you'll be an artist.
You might make art, and you might feel something.
Yeah.
And to me, that's worth it. You know what I mean? It was like, an important thing for me was that I had to accept, like, the risks in my thing. Like, if you join the military, you have to accept the risk of getting shot. When you become an artist, like, Mr. McNulty was probably the biggest asshole in my entire life. In eighth grade, I was doing real well, and he wanted me to go to the medical program at Votech.
Okay.
Because that's kind of what it seemed like I was going to do.
Okay.
And that was the first time I think I ever told anyone that I wanted to be a writer.
Wow, that's so cool.
And he was like, what do you think you want to do with your life? And I was like, I kind of think I want to write books. And his exact words were, writers die in the attics of apartments, of houses that they don't own, hoping that they come up with ideas.
That is so, like, horrible.
If I was you, I would look into, like, medical writing or something like that, so that you could write, like, articles about, like...
That's killer.
And it pissed me off. It really made me fucking mad. And, like, that
made me all the more be like, dude, I'm gonna be a writer now.
That's part of that. You're not. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's what really, like, I realized. I was like, oh my god, like, I hate this, and I'm going to prove you the fuck wrong. And there's a girl, and I love her story. She was a motocross racer, and she got paralyzed from the waist down, and she can move her legs underwater now.
Okay, wow.
And it's all based on, and again, because when she woke up from her accident, the first thing that they always taught her to do was to try and move your legs.
Mm-hmm.
And she woke up, she couldn't move her fucking legs,
Mm-hmm.
and the doctor looked at her and she was like, "You're never gonna walk again." And the first thing she said was, "I'm gonna prove you the fuck wrong."
That's awesome. I love that. I
And
am always about just having a spirit of like
and
not giving up.
she spent her time, like, I think she can actually walk on dry land now, but when you look at her, she's like staring at her feet because she has to keep her consciousness like on it, like back to that like meditative flow state.
Right.
Like it's
The
got
neurological connectiveness is
yeah,
probably
there's like no natural ability, but she's able
Yeah.
to fucking like focus on the muscles and make them twitch around the bone or whatever is happening.
right. And that's funny. I mean, not trying to really gas my fiance up here, but
I mean,
seem to
he's
be
been
doing
through a lot, and
He has been through a lot of shit.
and you know, nothing for nothing, but that's like, it goes back to that thing we were talking about too, about supporting people that like I you know, I'm an orphan, and like
Yeah.
people are like, wow, like you've been through so much, and I'm like, yeah, you know, it is, but my therapist was like, you know, that's how we know like people have really been through a lot, and they
Yeah.
know people who've been through a lot because they're always like, yeah, you know, it was hard, but like,
I'm still here.
you know, yeah, and
I'm still going.
like real abuse victims and real people that have been like, when people are crying wolf, they're usually crying.
Yeah.
And when people have really been through something, they're usually like, oh, well, that was bad, but like it could have been worse.
I think
or
after
like,
a while, and it's really sick and sad, but like after a while, you go through shit, and you're just kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of getting used to this, to be honest. And I'm starting to get a little hard to it. So
yeah,
like,
you get
I don't
used
know,
to
should I
negative
be
behavior.
crying? After a while, it's kind of like if I don't laugh, I'm gonna cry thing. So
Yeah.
we keep a really good attitude about it. He definitely does. But like I know for him, it really sucked because before he got in the accident, like it's sort of like you said, you're an artist, and you know you're an artist, and he
Yeah.
did music and was into it and loved it, was an awesome guitar player, and then the accident happened, and it was like, how am I going to manifest my art again, like with music? And he had to learn how to brush his teeth and stuff again, let alone play guitar, but he still did. He
Yeah.
sat down and he got a slide, and like day after day kept going at it and going at it and going at it. Now he like plays amazingly. So it was like, when you're an artist, you just know, you're like, I have to do this. This is who I am. Like, I can't stop.
Yeah, that's
And,
awesome though.
Yeah, and that inspires me, and I feel like I'm the same way. Like, you knew you were going to be a writer. It didn't matter if Mr. McNulty told you no or not. You're like, dude, I'm a writer. That's who I am. It's what I am. It's what I do.
Yeah, there's something inside of like people that tells them what they are going to do.
I always knew I was a singer from
Yeah.
the beginning. I
Yeah.
always knew.
You know, and you can try to beat things like that out of kids, but it doesn't work. And
I had people
it
tell
makes
me
them
when I was
angry and hateful toward everybody else.
definitely and I told in the beginning of the podcast, I was saying about how great my mom was, but my parents were divorced, and on my dad's side, I had the opposite perspective, that I got a lot of criticism, and I was like, they told me, you know, like, I like to write and I like to do art and I like to do music, and they said all that stuff's really great, you can do that in your free time, but you know, you need to start thinking about a real career or something you need to do. And that, I was like, well, that's what I'm good at. That's what I do. So that is a little hard for me to just deny everything I love. And it was really discouraging. It made me feel like what I was good at wasn't really worth it. So that's why it was great I had my mom.
I think it was James Brown that told his parents that he had a career. It just didn't make him any money yet.
That's funny.
Yeah, and he was talking about his music, and again, it's because he knew that this was what he was supposed to do.
Right, and I mean, thank God we have James Brown. James Brown rocks. What if he hadn't? What if he had been like, yeah, you're right. Guess I should become an accountant.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just watching a video with Jim Carrey the other day. And Jim Carrey was like when he was young, and he was talking about how he chased his dream of becoming a comedian. And Jim Carrey like had a pretty rough childhood. I think by the age of 14 he was homeless with his family.
His dad died young too, I think.
I think so. And it was his dad he talked about.
Older. He put the $1 million check that he wrote himself in his dad's coffin.
Oh really? Okay,
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
He wrote, when he decided he was going to be an actor and he went to America from Canada, he wrote to $10 million for acting services rendered, and as a check for himself.
To himself. I did hear that.
And then he did it, and he never did anything with the check. And then when his dad died, he put the check in his dad's coffin.
That's really cool that he did that. But a thing that he said that was very interesting on the video is he said, my dad settled down with a job that he didn't really like, but he did it for stability, and he did it for our family. And then I think he said at age 41, his dad was let go from that quote-unquote stable job.
Safe job.
And he said, that taught me that there really isn't any such thing as stability. So I could go chase a job that I hated that might be stable, or I could go chase what I loved and, see that. Because I saw that my dad actually didn't even do what he loved and still didn't get what he wanted. So he was like, it sucked both ways. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. So he's like, so I decided to just chase what I loved and become a comedian. And, now Jim Carrey is Jim Carrey, so.
There's a quote from Charles Bukowski. On his gravestone, he's a fantastic writer. On his gravestone, there's 2 words. It says, don't try. And this guy worked his entire life to be a writer and didn't get published until he was 60.
Wow.
And you'd think he would have wrote, try on his thing, but he had to stop caring. Throughout everything in his entire life, he kind of realized it doesn't matter. You don't try. And if you have to try, you have to give it everything that you're going to have.
Right.
If you're going to try, die for it.
Right.
Literally. And that's the triumph of the human spirit to me is when you find something that's so much bigger than you that it's worth it.
Exactly.
It's worth the risk. It's worth the danger because fuck
beautiful.
It, that's why.
Yeah, because it's that beautiful, and I just want to be a part of it. Honestly, it's an honor just to be a fragment of that picture.
Yeah, it's the great play of life, and it is
exactly.
It is an honor to contribute a verse.
When I'm on a stage and I'm singing, and I connect with one person in the audience, and I make eye contact with them, and I just feel it. I know that we're both on the same wavelength, and I'm making them feel something because of what I'm doing in that moment. That's worth it.
Absolutely.
That alone, that one moment was worth it all.
It's the moment when your art, like as we said earlier, it takes on a destiny of its own. It becomes bigger than you.
Yes.
And
I don't know what she's thinking when she looks in my eyes and I'm singing something and she starts tearing up. I don't know. I don't need to know. But you know what? I know the feeling. I know that as I look in her face that I'm eliciting that response. Mm-hmm. It's pretty damn cool.
Speaking of the verses that we contribute to the world, Briana has prepared some lovely... they are covers, correct?
They are covers, yeah.
Some lovely covers for the world to hear, and I'm very excited to hear them myself.
Okay, cool. I'm about to pull them up.
We can begin that, and we will sign off shortly after that.
Yeah, sounds good. Do you want to cut the segment and then put another one on, or you want to go through?
We'll say bye right here.
Okay,
and then,
sounds cool.
And then I'll just put the segment at the... just keep recording.
Just record. Screw it. We're going to just keep
recording.
Yeah,
just go right in.
Okay.
Just not nice and natural. Who cares?
Nice and natural. Sounds good to me. Bear with me. Hopefully my guitar's still in tune.
Oof, yeah.
With all the weather we've been having lately, it's been a little weird.
It is a...
Also, I got to get my guitar repaired.
New Jersey...
It's getting a little messed up.
New Jersey has some of the strangest weather, I swear. It
does. We really get it all.
We really get it all. We get it all in the same week.
Needs to be tuned.
There's a quote from a musician. I don't think he was actually even a guitar player that said, guitar players spend half their time tuning guitars and the other half of the time playing out of tune.
That is so true. I've been trying to recently, every time I play, tune up beforehand, but I always forget. But I noticed, that I think the more I play, don't mind that, it's my tuner. Every time I play, I'll hear, one string that's a little off, and the whole time I'll be playing, it's distracting, because I'm like, oh, that freaking string is so off, and I hear it, and it just annoys me. And,
you're on stage, and that's the thing, that's another thing about learning to perform live, is, your first, initial, oh, shit, I fucked up, and you just keep going anyway.
Yes, that's so funny.
It's like a power moment, I think, because I had a moment on stage, and I'm not going to say which show it is,
okay.
but if anyone can guess, whatever. And I was on stage and I looked at like the crowd and nobody was doing anything. Nobody reacted.
Oh gosh, that's the worst feeling.
And
I've been there.
and like it was a different scene than I was used to. I was kind of more used to like house parties or like coffee shops where it was like people were kind of listening and paying attention. And this was like a bar, and I expected people to be like moving up and down and shit, and nobody did anything.
That is the worst feeling.
And I literally like had a moment on stage where I was like, this is probably the worst I'm ever gonna do. And
after a while, you kind of just have to lean into it. You're like, I am sucking right now. You know what?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna stop.
And it became empowering. I was like, so if this is my rock bottom, like let's plant this shit because it's all upwards from here.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing is like when you put out your first song, it's gonna be shit.
Exactly.
It should be shit anyway. I mean, maybe you got fucking lucky or you're you know
what? It's good to have a little bit of shit so you can at least be like, you need a place to go. If you start at the top, you're like, well, there he goes.
You need
to
earn
it.
Yeah, you need like there's like again there's always been like a grinding initiative. Like it used to be impossible to grind your way into the fucking world, and now like viral videos and like it's still kind of impossible, but it's a little less impossible.
It's a little less impossible. I think you can grind.
It's a little more saturated, but it's definitely you can definitely grind away at it.
You can. And even if your audience isn't the whole world, you have a limited audience, there's something to be said for that.
And you can definitely build. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Definitely. Like, you know, build castles, take a rock a day and just keep piling it up and eventually you'll have something.
Yeah.
You know what everybody wants to just take off, and
sometimes it's just not that. Sometimes you gotta work for it a little more.
And even people that deserve it, like
yeah, absolutely. I've seen people on Instagram or YouTube or whatever, and they only have a couple views. I'm like, you're amazing. How do you only have a couple views? You are so good. It's just exposure, networking, things like that. A lot of stuff comes down to networking.
It comes down to so many, like it definitely networking.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of stuff from networking, and I'm like, you don't even know me. You don't even know if I'm good or not. You just like it that I know so-and-so. And it's not even fair. But, okay. So anyway, should I launch into the song?
All right. And, yep.
Okay,
you do the countdown.
So I'm going to do Lovely Day by Bill Withers.
And goodbye, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to us.
We might say something after. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe if we decide we like you. All right. Wake up in the morning, love, and the sunlight hurts my eyes. Then something without warning, love, weighs heavy on my mind. Then I look at you, and the world's alright with me. Just one look at you, and I know it's gonna be a lovely day. A lovely day. Lovely day. A lovely day. A lovely day. A lovely day. A lovely day. When the sun that lies ahead of me seems impossible to face, and when someone else instead of me always seems to know the way, then I look at you and the world's alright with me. Just one look at you, and I know it's gonna be a lovely day, 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 ooh, a lovely day. And then I look at you, and the world's alright with me. at you. And I know it's gonna be a lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day. Ooh, a lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day.
Gotta love Bill Withers.
He is pretty good. Thank you. And then, so the other song I was gonna do was Ohio by Niel Young. But I played it like once today, so if I screw up, you guys are gonna have to forgive me.
Love Niel Young.
Yeah, I just had to give a shout out to Niel Young because he's freaking awesome.
Yeah, his music, he's on a whole other level, I think.
He really is.
Yeah.
And you said you saw him live. I'm pretty jealous of that.
Yeah, he performed like he wasn't an old man too. Like it was very energized, and I was not expecting him to be energized because a lot of his music is like slower and like kind of relaxed. But he puts on a fantastic show too.
I would love to see him live. I could see that.
It's not even just like in like his recordings, because his recordings, like, first off, you should probably listen to them on like the vinyl, because if anyone's worth listening to, it's probably Niel Young.
I do have a Niel Young vinyl. It's pretty dope.
Yeah, like it's just, you just feel the there's the voice is one of a kind. First off, I don't think there's ever going to be another man that hits those notes. Like,
he has a very unique voice, and it's beautiful. I love it. That's what made me fall in love with Niel Young.
He's really the master of his own avenue. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He picked up a guitar like Bob Dylan, but he sang like Niel Young, and he talked about things that really moved his heart the whole time.
Yeah,
and
like if you just listen to like the lyrics of Old Man or Ohio or
Old Man is
Needle
probably
and the Damage Done.
one
Like
of my
all
favorite.
Those lyrics are deep and beautiful, and things that he experienced in his life. They're very powerful, and they're timeless. They still go across today. But Ohio is actually the one I'm gonna do.
All right, so let us hear Ohio.
Okay. Ten soldiers and Nixon's coming. We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming for dead in Ohio. Gotta get down to it. Soldiers are gunning us down. Should have been done long ago. And what if you knew her and found her dead on the ground? How can you run when you know? La 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 la. Gotta get down to it. Soldiers are gunning us down. Should have been done long ago. How can you run when you know? 10 soldiers and Nixon's coming. We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming for dead in Ohio. 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 For dead in Ohio.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, on that note, we will talk to you again, and hopefully Briana will grace us with our presence at a later date.
It will be a pleasure. It's been a true pleasure being on this podcast. It's been awesome.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
And goodbye, and peace out.
Peace.